Okay, I went over the other one and I looked at it. It said 1522. So if I hadn't started talking about Warren G and all those other guys, then I probably would have been under my 15. So without further ado, again, continuing talking about Herbert Hoover. And one of the things that lost him a lot of credit was the bonus army incident where he didn't pay the veteran soldiers and kind of almost seemed like he didn't care about them. He lost credit with a lot of the people. And if you lose credit with the people, then you're not chief citizen anymore. So that faith in you isn't what I think is. Well, I think that's a big part of your presidency. So because he lost that, that's where he gets that C. And I think he did try to do what he could in his realm, like with a couple of different programs, and then tried to also talk with FDR about this. But um, but FDR was like, "Nah, you don't know. You're out. You are out." So speaking of FDR, we're gonna give him a B, and I know my conservative friends will be like, "Dude, really a B?" The only reason why I give him a B is because again, I'm looking at what the people wanted, and I mean, he helped the people. I mean, he helped certain people, I guess I should say, because I think in the long term, they some of the people didn't get the idea that it was short term or that it should have been short term. A lot of the programs in there, and he gave the answers when he needed to. I mean, one of the biggest things about him too is leading through World War II. Granted, an unprecedented, third and fourth terms. I mean, barely the fourth term, but he was able to lead through that, and he leaned on a lot of generals, which I respect him for that, for letting them do the stuff. And I mean, of course, there's a lot of other things that I probably don't know as far as the um, in-depth things, but as far as you can see on there, I think one of the reasons why he's always listed as number three is not just because a lot of historians lean left, but I think it's also because um, what he did for the people, or at least attempted to do for the people. He was trying to be the chief citizen, the fireside chats, all of those things. He was trying to be what he's supposed to be as far as a chief citizen, and I think that's got to give him a lot of credit, especially after people have kind of lost faith in the presidencies and whatnot. So we got Harry Truman, which I may come back on this, but I give him an A. And I'm still looking at like a Y, but I think I give him an A just because he was super decisive. I mean, he never went back on his decision to drop the atomic bomb, and I think, I mean, he made his claim. He said I had to do what I had to do, and whether it was right or wrong, of course, in war, what really is right and wrong, and so for him to do that, I think it was showing that he was decisive, especially when he fired MacArthur. I think that lost him a lot of credit, and I think I even read that he probably had a bad approval rating, so that's not good for the people. Which is, again, maybe he should be a B. I'm putting him at A still. I don't know, maybe because of the whole initiating the Cold War. I mean, kind of not initiating in the sense that like I'd like to have the Cold War, but at the same time he knew what was coming. And even though Stalin didn't like him as much as Stalin liked FDR, I think he held his ground on that, and especially asking to help Greece and Turkey with the Truman Doctrine, and eventually escalating that into spending more money for defensive purposes. Some would see it as offense too, because it's going into other territories. I mean, again, I might look at this and be like, yeah, you know what? It might be a B, but right now I'm going to keep him at an A because he was more decisive um, in a lot of his policies, and kind of while he wasn't an ardent like civil rights person, he kind of paved the way for that. And handling Korea, of course, he probably could have done more. I don't know. I wasn't in his position, but the fact that he had to make the decision to incorporate a declassified document at that time, NSC 68, and I am all about NSC 68 as far as it had a clear plan of what to do, and what the goal is for the Cold War. And I think his backing of that was good in that time of competitiveness with the Soviet Union. The guy right after him, I think Eisenhower is going to do this. And I think one of the reasons why I like him is because even though in his presidency he succumbed to the whole military industrial complex, I think when he went and made his farewell address, like, beware of it. I think he's telling the American people, like, look, it can drain this country. And I think he realized, I mean, yeah, it took towards the end of his presidency, but he realized that, you know, this is this is not something we want to continue going forward with. And for him to understand that and realize that, whether it was play or what was just for the public, I think for him to say something like that, I like that. I agree with him. He was kind of plagued with crises, especially one couple big incidences in the 1956, the year of 1956 with the Hungarian Revolution and the Suez Crisis issue. Again, how do you solve that, especially when your allies are doing the same thing that the Russians are doing? So how do you deal with that, especially without you knowing what's going on? Um, he a lot of his policies were kind of the left liked it, the right liked it. So I mean, you got to give him credit for the stability of government on there. He pretty much stabilized things, didn't try to escalate. There was some incidents, obviously, like the 1960 U-2 spy plane incident. Those kind of things did escalate the Cold War, but I think for the most part, he stabilized America in the Cold War, within the Cold War context. And then you've got John F. Kennedy, who I'm also going to give an A on there. And I think even though he had his, couple years of presidency before he's assassinated, I think his handling of the Cuban Missile Crisis alone brings him up there to that A. Especially also when he wants to cooperate with the Soviets. And I think another thing, and again, maybe I might be wrong on this, but when he did the Bay of Pigs, it was kind of initiated by Eisenhower, but it was played out through Kennedy's thing. And while he could have said no, he still did it, and then he owned it. Like he said, "Oh yeah, that's." I think I'm pretty sure I read that he was the one that I don't know if he apologized for it, but kind of said yes, that was a blunder, kind of thing. Initiating the Peace Corps, his Latin American relations. I think it's one of the reasons why my grandma was all about him and saying that we're Mexican, we should vote for Kennedy, or the party of Kennedy. But at the same time, I think his leadership could have been fulfilled even more, especially as he started to deal with some of the social upheavals or social issues that were going on in the country. And facing off against Khrushchev is pretty cool. Lyndon Johnson, I'm going to give him, what did I give him? I gave him a C. And this, one of the reasons why I gave him a C is because, yes, he did great things with the Civil War, civil rights, which should have left him at a B for his civil rights endeavors. But the war on poverty and the programs that he kind of borrowed from FDR, the war on poverty is something that's like it's kind of like the war on terrorism. Like you can't fight something you can't see, and you can't fight something that's going to just spend and drain money, 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 money. And I might have contradicted myself right there with maybe some of the other presidents, and I hope somebody points that out so I can really think, oh yeah, maybe I'll rethink that. But for the most part, Johnson, to me, that war on poverty really gets him down there because it's like you're trying to fight something that, okay, I'm sorry, yes, you can see poverty around, but it's something that's going to happen in a capitalistic society. So, Vietnam, the handling of Vietnam going in there and him going against the Constitution brings him at a C on there. Richard Nixon, you know, he almost reminds me of like a John Adams, but I'm going to give him an F just because the people, the faith in the government after him, and maybe the faith was dying out already, but because of the people's faith in government, especially during Watergate, that's really got to cement his being in the F. His handling of Vietnam, of saying like, "Look, let's back out," and then bomb the hell out of Laos and Cambodia. I don't know, just the way that was handled was crappy as hell. So I mean, those two alone, and his lack of faith, and bringing the lack of faith in the government, um, leads him there. I still think he did really good as a diplomat, and as a vice president and whatnot. But I just don't think he did great as a president. But of course, I wasn't alive at that time, nor was I alive at any of these times. Gerald Ford gets an F too, right there with him, mostly because of his pardoning of Nixon. That was your time to kind of separate yourself from him, especially when people already distrusted the government. And yet he didn't. He did try to do some equal rights. He ended Vietnam, or at least Vietnam was kind of ending in there, but in a bad way. He didn't really get support from Congress, and in his dealings with the Middle East are kind of wonky back and forth. So, really kind of a forgettable president, I think. And then Jimmy Carter is also going to get an F. We got a lot of Fs here. And the reason why I think he's a great person, I think the humanitarian efforts after his presidency and whatnot is a great thing. But again, we're looking at presidents. I think it's the whole energy crisis thing where he starts and sits there and blames the American people and not giving enough of his own humbleness or anything like that. I think as a chief citizen, you're never going to tell, like, it's your guys' fault, really. Like, at least blame, you know, the opposite party or something. Like, you're not going to just sit there and blame the American people for the energy crisis. A lot of people said that he never answered his phone calls from congressmen and he just never called back. So that whole like not being with Congress on there, I guess that kind of does it for me too. I guess as a teacher, starting the Department of Education, but maybe that just started more bureaucracy. So he gets an F. Ronald Reagan. I know a lot of my liberal friends are gonna upset me or get upset with me for this. I'm gonna put him as an A. Just from what I know of him ending the Cold War, yes, under the split of the Soviet Union happens under Bush, but I think at first escalating, getting away from detente and escalating it, I think it showed a more forceful thing. It was like, we're tired of fighting this thing. We're tired of being in there and having that actor persona, almost like Zelensky, and almost kind of one of the things that I don't like about Reagan is that he was an actor, but I think that show of force against the Soviet Union, I think that alone gets him high numbers or high rankings. And then filtering out some of the bad economics. I mean, I guess people go back and forth with the whole Reaganomics thing and the supply side and trickle down, all that other good stuff. I mean, I don't know. Some of the stuff I read was that the economy did great towards the end of his presidency and a little bit after. Um, but I really can't judge presidents on their economy. I can only judge what they do that may affect something else, like Wilson. Oh well, not Wilson's. I forgot what president I was going to mention, but I find him very a-like, just in the way he handled a lot of the things. There was some other stuff, with him kind of involving the federal government and in the aviation issue and whatnot. Um, I think rhetorically, I think he deserves that a a status. George H.W. Bush, I'm going to give him a C. Usually, one-term presidents aren't going to get that great unless you're Polk. What did I give him? A C. Yeah, I give him a C. First Gulf War, going after Saddam Hussein because they went after Kuwait. Was it necessary? Is that what we were really needing to go into to protect Kuwait, or was it for our own interest? Um, Again, I don't know if this is really his fault or not. I don't know too much about the newer, more recent presidents. Um, but one of the things that he comes in, he's like, read my lips, no new taxes. And then they have new taxes. Again, is that so much his fault, but maybe his not pushing enough to make sure that's in there? Maybe that's where, I mean, to say that he lied about taxes, I don't know. Maybe it's just he couldn't get it passed. But again, that shows lack of forcefulness under his administration. The Soviet Union splits up, so it's like now you don't have a Cold War anymore. And he opens up, he does the NAFTA, he initiates NAFTA, even though it's done under Clinton. He's the one that kind of pushed for it. So I'm not a really big NAFTA fan, and so I give him that C. And along with him is his successor, Bill Clinton. And it's really not because of his personal stuff, because again, I'm not trying to judge him on their personal stuff. Although, again, as chief citizen, you kind of have to live up to that model. But his is the NAFTA thing and continuing that. I think one of the good things about him is that it was pretty bipartisan for the most part in his first term, I believe. His involvement overseas, though, and the lacking decisions after the Cold War. I mean, I got to try to put myself in his position. There's no Cold War anymore. So what are you fighting? What are you going after? And what's your goal? At least in the Cold War, every president had at least somewhat of a blueprint. Now, what do? You need that communism to kind of feed or that common enemy to feed off of. So what does Clinton do? And from what I hear, again, I don't know too much, and that's why he's kind of in the C, because I'm going to say, you know what? Instead of giving a horrible or super high, he's just going to be average. From what I know, or from what people tell me, I guess that were around, I was a little kid, obviously, is that economy was doing great and things were doing great his first term. His second term is when it started to slip. Presidential second terms are never really that good. But for him, I think he's followed the same suit with that. that second term presidency. I do know the one thing that he's closing down a lot of these bases, and that again leaves us a little bit more vulnerable in there. And so these last three, and Biden's not on here. Again, I'm going to kind of just leave those to avoid any kind of political ramblings on there. I can tell you now that I don't think any of them for me would be A's. Um, I think I don't even think they would be B's too. I think we got C presidents here. Bush had some highs, Obama had some highs, Trump had some highs for me, and they also had their ultimate lows. His unwillingness to deal with the recession or the coming recession towards the end of his second term. Obama's foreign policy I wasn't a fan of, and Trump's rhetoric I wasn't a fan of. So there's a lot of mystery to that, but I'm not going to go into those. So, oh, maybe I just did, I guess. So there you have it. There's my kind of rankings, I guess. There's a lot of there's A's, there's C's, there's F's, there's a couple D's in there, maybe indecisive, and then there's some unknowns. So again, I'm trying to see. I want to try to see how you guys think of this, and I want to see how other teachers think of this. Maybe it might change my mind. Maybe if I find out more information, these rankings will change. And until then, I will keep you updated on there. But there is the rankings.